𝗕𝗲𝗏𝗂𝗃, who is the co-founder at 𝗵𝗵𝗀 Security. Please welcome Rahul with a huge round of applause. To join him, I'd like to introduce the panel members now. We have Mr. Devender Kumar, who is the CISO at ITC Infotech, Mr. Ajay Chawla, Head of IT and CISO at Sterlite Technologies Limited, Mr. Boda Gupta, Head Digital and IT at Brigade Group, Jacxine Fernandez, who is VP Information Security and ICT Governance at Bangalore International Airport Limited, Nitin Ajmera, who is Associate Director IT Security, performing the role of CISO at 𝗵𝗲𝗊 Hospitals. And with this, over to you, Rahul, to get started with the session.
So much, ladies and gentlemen, for still having this much power of sitting here without lunch. I really apologize for that, for the delay. We'll try to make it as short as possible, to the point, so that everyone can have a great meal after that. We have almost maximum 5 topics to talk about, 5 questions you can say, and to the esteemed panelists who are there. Now, full day, I think we talk about quantification, we talk about 0 day, we talk about other aspects and all. Now, let's hear from the leaders who are solving the problems at the ground and what they think, how they solve, and the outcome of this entire conversation, which I would request the panelists also and for the audience also to make it more useful for you, to have solutions and the answers which really can resonate with you at a ground level. And before you, when you leave from this panel session, there will be some takeaways in a practical manner to implement in your organization from a policy level, or maybe from a architecture level, or maybe from a thought leadership point of view. So my first question will be to Mr. Devender. And so how has security model changed from pre-COVID era to current times in terms of cyber risk to enterprise due? And due to hybrid and especially remote work. And if I have to, because the reason for this, if you see, there is a huge transformation and change in terms of the attack vectors from the threat actors, national sponsored hackers, cyber criminals, and so on and so forth, especially in the pandemic. It was a paradise of hackers at that time, because we were not prepared to really at scale to take care of this level of people working from home, from an architecture point of view, from a maturity point of view. So what was your views around that and how you handled that?
Yeah, so if we look at what happened during the COVID era, there was an accelerated digital transformation which we saw across all the companies. And this acceleration was so far. This acceleration was so fast, and companies, I'm not saying all of them, but many of them didn't look at the security and the risk side of it, because there was a necessity to change the way processes were being run. There was a necessity to change, otherwise these companies could not have survived. So a lot of things were done overnight. A lot of things were done at a pace that you can never imagine. So what has happened is, there is a lot of gaps which have been left out because of the priority, because of the urgency which was there during the COVID time. Now let's look at what has happened as a result of that. So what has happened after the COVID, during the COVID and even now, there was an increase in the identity-based attack which started happening. We saw a lot of cases around the identity takeover, of course related with phishing and many other things. But yeah, that's one thing which all of us saw. Other thing which became important because of this hybrid working from home and all of that, suddenly the endpoint became very, very critical. And a lot of attacks were happening by compromise of the endpoint. So all of us saw a lot of companies adopted the EDR and other similar products to protect their endpoint. Another thing which happened during that time and which is still happening in many companies is the use of personal devices. While I keep hearing this BYOD, but personally I'm not a fan of this BYOD, because irrespective of what the vendors tell you, irrespective of what the service providers tell you, there is always a gap and there is always a risk, which at least I see with the use of BYOD. And in many cases it is not even BYOD. Companies have just allowed use of personal laptops to do the business, and all of us know the difference between a corporate laptop versus a personal laptop. I don't have to get into those details. So, and the last thing is, because everybody is working from home. As a result of that, there is an increased usage of company-provided devices for personal use. When you start seeing the trend of using the personal devices, then employees find ways to look around, find ways to circumvent the controls you have, because they get used to using the official devices for personal use. I think these are some of my comments on this.
Very well put. Thank you, Devender. So I'll go to Nitin, who takes care of Manipal Hospital security, chain of security. So Nitin, especially in pandemic, if you see, hospitals were becoming I think the most hot spots, because you guys are, thanks to the contribution to the saving lot of lives there. At that time, I'm sure that you never have seen this much level of scale of being the users, because you are the only sector which was very, very active at that time, along with some telecom and others also. So how you tackled that situation in the industry as a leader in security practice?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So see, yeah, that's a very important point that you brought across, because in the COVID times, as you said, doctors or the hospitals were the ones which are most under pressure because of the rise in cases. And for us, the challenge was, how do we give access to doctors to do the remote consultation? How to empower them? How to enable them? And since the time was running out, the cases were going up. So only way to give was VPN access. Now, the problem that we faced, I'm telling you the practical example, what happened is, doctors are not IT people. They don't understand VPN. Neither they carry laptops like IT people, right? Only thing they have is mobile phones. So I can't give VPN access on mobile phones. So that became kind of a issue for us. So the way we have been talking about in the last 4-5 years, ZTNA, they call it. So this came to our rescue, wherein we implemented ZTNA solution. We gave them the access, the ZTNA access on their mobile phones. Because see, consultation is one part, wherein doctors were used to using Zoom calls or Google Meet to give the maybe prescriptions, you call it, to the patients. But what happens for the data of the patients, such as the previous reports, the medical records, all these things are basically in our database. So accessing this for doctors became a challenge. So ZTNA came to our rescue. I have not named the company or the OEM here, but through ZTNA, we were able to provide doctors access, and from this teleconsultation, they're able to see the records of the patients and give them the right prescription. This actually helped us. So that is one of the ways we enable the doctors and also the other supporting staff through ZTNA access. That's why we use the technology and gave this enablement platform to doctors.
And just to add into it, just to give more perspective to the crowd, when the problem statement came and when you were able to solve this problem up to an extent, what is the average time you can suggest that this much time was an average in our industry which took to really solve the problem up to a reasonable manner?
See, when it comes to
Sorry for a tough question, but yeah, in case you can
okay. Now, implementing technology for IT professionals is easy, but acceptance of the technology is a bit of challenge for non-IT professionals as doctors, right?
True.
So, most of the times, though we implemented it, and that time, see, most of the doctors were also working from home. There's nothing like working for doctors, but they were at home. So, for them to understand what we are talking to, such as their mobile, what we are going to install, implement on their mobile remotely, and making them use the mobile, we had to do a lot of hand-holding, do a lot of awareness sessions even before we rolled out any solution. Because first they need to understand it and go through the life cycle for the patient as well as them as well, saying how to use this, how to click the buttons and actually go to a database where the patient records or such information such as lab reports, for example. How do they use it? So awareness sessions and hand-holding and teaching them the technology to use, that was more challenge to us rather than implementing technology itself.
Yeah.
So this was one of the challenges we faced.
So in a crux, I can say it took a little bit long time to implement, thanks to the workforce we have. So my next question to Jacxine, to you, sir. What are the, now considering this work from home culture and in your sector, especially if you talk about aviation and other in your previous experiences, what are the best strategies for the organization to ensure a secure work from home model by considering that it's mixing with hybrid right now. So what is your suggestion to the people who are looking to scale this model to a reasonable, more peaceful implementation where they can say that yes, this is something where I have arrived and I can sleep peacefully a little bit?
I think, first, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Rahul, for having me. One of the things is I don't think, let's say, work from home happened with COVID only. It just scaled up with COVID. I think people, if you were traveling across and logging in from hotels or from home, you were already doing a bit of work from home. It just happened that the government now said don't go to the office. So that was a change. Having said that, I think Nitin talked a bit about from the user perspective. From an organization perspective, I think one of the things, and good or bad, you can say that, cloudify became the term. You cloudify everything, your applications. How else will you give access? So that became an approach to enable work from home for a lot of people. Unfortunately, the word cloudify didn't come with details, so many times people just went with a lift and shift. Lift it out of my data center, stick it into one of the hyperscalers became the answer. Of course, organizations started maturing, started understanding what is cloud ready, what application modernization I have to do to make these applications, whether it's in healthcare, whether it's in aviation, what can actually move to the cloud was one thing. Secondly, there are always going to be applications which you can't move to the cloud, frankly. How do I solve that problem? Because the employee can't come to work. So, again, VPN, I know there are a lot of people who will still beat up VPN about it, but let's be frank, it was a lifesaver for a lot of organizations.
True.
So that also worked. Application proxy services came to the help for a lot of organizations. And part of it was also posturing, You're connecting with your own devices, like Rahul says he hates, it was Devender who says he hates BYOD, but I couldn't buy that many laptops. There weren't that many for sale. What do? I still had to, so I had to start posturing. If you're running let's say a hacked version or a rooted version of an OS, I will not allow you to connect. Or if your antivirus signatures or updates are not up to date, I will not allow you to connect. So I think those were many of the alternatives that people started both from an organization perspective and from an end user perspective, a lot of people. And we also adopted a mishmash of it, so to say.
So I'll come back to, again, like he mentioned you, so I'll not leave him without your comment for sure. So now, especially if you talk about ITC and in your industry specifically, now the COVID has ended and people are working from home. Still people are working from home. I'll take my example. Every quarter I come up with we are 100% work from company, and when every quarter on Slack I put how many people want to come to office. 97% people are voting we don't want to come to office. I'm not able to open the office right now. So that's when the trend becomes people are more still the organizations where people don't want to come to office and they want to work from home even after when it is may or may not required. How you're tackling this situation, and is there any change in the existing previous infrastructure which we established at the time of COVID to get out of it? And is there any change happen there, and what are the things you did to make sure that it will, whatever it's done, there will not be that much change in the current investment, but still you want to move it further with a hybrid model or to make sure that work from home becomes more trustable?
See, if you ask me the way Jacxine said, it is not that work from home didn't exist in company like ours and many others who are in similar business. It was there. It's just the scale changed at that time. So those investments were made at that time from our perspective to cater to the scale, because suddenly it's not like your 10% of your workforce is working from home. Suddenly it's near 100%. So all of that happened, and that's going to stay. So that's not going away. And you like rightly said, while the employees may be in the town, but they don't want to now travel 1.5 hours one way to office. It's no more, and I think the industry has changed permanently now. These are employees, and that includes me, who have become used to working from home. They will continue to work, but at the same time, there are other aspects like how do you build a culture? If everybody is working remote, they join remote, they leave remote, and you never get to interact in person. Like now this we are having in person, this conference, and during the COVID time, even this was being done remote.
True.
But then what you learn in person by talking to your peers, meeting them, having that interaction, we know that makes a difference. So I think the model of future will be hybrid, while right now it's pure home. Now whether that hybrid is going to be 10% in office, 20% in office, or 50% in office, I think that will be driven by many factors depending upon the work you do, depending upon the team, depending upon your customers. There are many aspects of it, but yeah, the model has at least changed permanently is the way I see.
So the takeaway from the question, ladies and gentlemen, is that still hybrid work will there. There is no correct answer when it will end it, so you need to plan accordingly. So I'll move to the next question, and that question will be to Mr. Boda first, and then I'll come to Mr. Devender again. So what are the practical methods and long-term strategies to enable and or enhance digital business trust? Because business trust is a very large concept. If you can help the audience to understand the business trust when we talk about security, and from a CISO's point of view, what is their contribution to make it visible to the stakeholders to ensure that yes, there is business trust when it comes to security, and that's how you're helping them to build a business in that way.
Hello, good afternoon. Firstly, a small disclaimer, whatever expressed by me at this point in time are purely my personal, nothing to do with my current or previous employers. And coming to the long-term view, see, first and foremost, whenever we take a look at information security, it's pretty dynamically changing, that landscape is changing. Like, you know, I think there was some presentation ago, the question remains same, a question to Einstein, and the question remains same, why are you asking the same question again and again every year? It's because the answers keep changing, right? And not only answers in this case, the context keeps changing. See, the same question asked to me and to Devender or to Jacxine will elicit different responses because the business context is very different.
True.
Okay, this is where the CISO need to start talking 3 different languages. We multilingual. When I talk multilingual, first language is fundamentally speak security. Number 1, the security includes controls, which are various nature, basic controls, so technology, infrastructure, network, endpoint, all these kind of things comes in play. Then comes the second is, see, CISO is not all accountable for everything. CISO has to work with other teams, which is predominantly IT team. IT team includes IT, infrastructure, applications, and all sorts of things. That's why the IT operations language one needs to speak. If you don't understand those 2 languages and marry those things, implementing any control becomes next to impossible. Then the third language one needs to really acquire and talk a lot is the business language. The business language is what is the outcome the business is, the purpose of the business, to the questions like the operations that are critical to business. Like, you know, if it's a customer facing business, right, essentially like an e-commerce, yeah, if I talk about a new solution I'm going to roll out after 6 months, it's too slow.
True.
Whereas if it is a non-regulated industry, like wine, where we don't really change too much, right? If I try to change the technology every month or every 3 months, the business cannot take it. The absorption or the adoption takes a long time, right? So this is where, when it comes to companies like us, I mean like brick and mortar companies, convenience eats security for breakfast. So it doesn't work. So essentially the convenience is what we have to really look for the business and enable that business. Okay, they still want to, for example, they still want to send documents outside somewhere. That we have to kind of bring that awareness that, okay, well, you can still send, enable, say, give that assurance that I'm now no longer a no department, I'm an enabler. Bring that, that change takes some time. Now, coming to this kind of, you know, the long-term strategy, it's always, you know, put the business first, and then comes the backward, the IT and the operations, then comes the security. If we follow this method, the change, we kind of usually put security first, hence the priorities gets misplaced. So this could be a transition we can look at. Now, the part where we need to understand, say for example, when it comes to technologies like, you know, everybody says, yeah, I'm adopting IoT, blockchain, the AML and all that. If you don't understand the context in which it's getting adopted,
True.
it's very difficult. So that with that context, one need to understand the application or the what we call as the threat from that application perspective. Say for example, I am kind of creating a chatbot and which is going to answer my queries from my customers. Now the question is, what's the security risk in it? Nothing. But then if the chatbot is capable of applying some machine learning to learn certain things on itself, there is a possibility that somebody can use a poison attack to give weird responses. Now how do you prepare the business for that? Now these are the, again, context. Context brings the strategy in the future.
Sure. So if I have to summarize the answer in a nutshell, it's like reverse engineering your plan with respect to business in mind, and then doing all which can bring more trust to them from your actions, which will be understood by the people whom you are doing, from L1 to L7 for sure. I'll move to the next question. This is to Ajay, and how do you see the role of CISOs evolving, and what are the latest technologies CISOs are leveraging to manage security effectively? Very simple question, but I want you to, if you can elaborate more from a contextual point, will be great for the audience.
Thank you, Rahul, and thank you everyone who's waiting for this session to end.
So
and
Mike,
for the
little bit, if you can make it up. Yeah.
Okay. I hope, now this is much louder. So I was, acknowledging the people who are all sitting there, and the, special thanks to the front benchers to be here with us. I hope we are adding value. That's the intent. So to Rahul's question about, how it is evolving in two fronts, I would like to touch upon from an organization part. And, just want to, many of the things which Gupta just now said, is, what I'm building on. Because from an organization today, and from an InfoSec perspective, I think it is very important that we bring the entire organization into this fold. You are not the only one who's saying no, but that realization that, that everybody is responsible. So we are trying to do it some ways, there are many ways to do it. One of the ways you can look at is build, I may say, the alliances, and what is in it for them is, for example, the IT team. There will be some people who would be interested in that line of, career in terms of, going towards the cybersecurity. So there are many courses for it, many certifications, ISACA and others. I think there is, and then you have to find within your team who are the enablers for them, right? Who will go the extra mile to do the trainings and, guide them from the security point of view. That way you are bringing IT to realize, to extending to what Gupta said, facilitate them. They also realizing what is important from a cybersecurity point of view. That way you are doing two things. One is bringing a partner on board, which is an important stakeholder. And also the second part being that, today the talent is obviously a concern. I think you're solving to a large extent that problem, who understand the landscape in which they are working, and also have that mindset about, building that mindset about cybersecurity. Some kind of, you can say an extended arm getting built up on its own, they wanting to learn, and you are getting the benefit out of that. So, with my role playing both, I can compartmentalize them and play a red hat, white hat kind of thinking, and, let them segment themselves and then think, people from other perspective. I think that builds in a lot more thing. It just started in our case, obviously there is an initial energy and then it subsides, but that initiative has kind of gotten hold into it. The idea then is that, as we are going towards the Industry 4.0, and then, many people talked about IoT, and I also in my previous session, I think you are then extending that to the, the plant operations people, and then extending it beyond. right? So that's the journey, and I think that's an evolving. One point which I want to leave it is that, you are building alliances and you are extending the team. You are solving many things through this one aspect, just as a takeaway. The other piece being from a technology point of view, and I think, from all the layered security we are talking about, the attack outside is becoming sophisticated every minute, right? Because they are using the latest technology. They are dedicatedly working only on this, right? And therefore they are bringing in, and you will see a pattern. You see about the attacks which are happening, and I think as in US there is Thanksgiving weekend, the likelihood of that spike happening, every year happens because everybody is away, minimally staffed, and people know these patterns, right? And there are not human beings, non-human attacks happening, right? As Elon Musk is talking about Twitter, non-bots, here also it's predominantly non-human attack which is happening, which is just screening for, chinks in the armor, and whether it is as simple as a password. So, it's a much hated word from an AI perspective, but, that thinking should be that you are bringing in tools which are demonstratively showing, at least in the beginning, machine learning, and then later on AI. That is the way, because humans, we will not be able to scale against that attack. So one piece, I think, though it's a much maligned word, everybody uses AI, but I think there is some merit in it if you, peel the onion and look for the, the sweetest part of the food. So
True,
thank you.
True. So I'll move to Mr. Boda.
I just want to add one
Please,
small
please.
point. See, I think as a long-term evolution of a CISO role, I think one need to look beyond a role of CISO and as a person. A couple of things. See, CISOs are typically ingrained or rather hardwired for hacking, meaning hacking any problem, whatever in front of them, right? So there are a couple of problems which are really beyond the CISO role. One, there's a acute shortage of talent across CISO, across cybersecurity domain in India and across the world. Is there a way we can hack it? Part one. Part two, there is acute shortage of cybersecurity products based out of India. Is there a way we can hack it? There are two ways you can hack it. One, it's a time you need to throw a punch beyond your weight. The way you can do that is spend at least 30 minutes of 1 hour a week mentoring somebody, aspirant to become better at cybersecurity and build some and contribute to the capability. Please do that if possible. And if there is a remote possibility, dedicate 1% of your security budget towards Indian products. If these two things you can do, it will be a very tiny contribution that will add to a lot more evolution of the cybersecurity portion of the country than just cybersecurity portion of the company what we are working for. Please see if you can do something about it.
True.
I'll be more than happy to connect and discuss these opportunities if possible anytime later beyond the conference.
So if I have summarized this question's answer, I think one is, there is a beautiful saying that you can patch any technology, but there is no patch of human ignorance. And that falls in every part of our life. And that's where the workforce ignorance comes to picture when they want to click and all. And second is something which really nicely Mr. Boda said, that you have to look at in a very holistic manner. So I think I categorize all the L1 to L7 to 3 categories. One is the risk viewer, that is your board, your CEO. One is the risk shower, which is the CISO, CIO, and one is the risk implementer. So if you are taking care of looking for a technology who can cater all three when you are taking a decision, that will be more fruitful for you. Now I'll move to the last question, and after I will make you leave for your lunch. Is this question to you, to Ajay sir, and I would like to add a little bit about that because that's our interest of the topic, and very tough question to ask to a CISO. I'll put the terms and conditions before I ask the warning statement, because it's very, very difficult to articulate, come to a conclusion to this question. And the question is that how, according to your organization is managing on return on investment of their security spend. Now, why I'm asking this question, because in my limited understanding of 8 to 10 years in the industry, I have seen there is always a little bit friction between the CFOs and CISOs whenever they go for the next quarter budget. And the conversation doesn't go well in most of the cases because the two personalities don't understand much in the core about each other when it comes to their profiles on which they are working. And CF is always, okay, last quarter you had a budget, what you did with that? So how you will come up with the, what do you say, return on security investment which you have already taken and you want more on that. So I'll ask Ajay sir first on this question, and then anyone who would like to jump into the answer, I'll be more than happy to take their answer. Yes.
I think many people would want to contribute, so I'll keep it short. I think it's a challenge. You know, the first time you are setting up layers, you know, you would, if you are, you know, clear and forceful enough, and I think you will get that. The continuum journey becomes a next step altogether, because they start seeing what did I get out of it.
True.
That whole realization that nothing happened is because of these malwares, these, you know, other points which we protected, the advisories which were covering, the patches which were done. You know, there is a constant grunt of work which is happening. So be there in front of the executives, you know, at every opportunity you get, I think is one of the ways. Also, as I mentioned in my other thing, is that realization if it comes on their own. And for that you have to trigger it. What if an attack happens? What is you would be seeing happening in the world? You know, that realization when the board members are talking about it from a cyber resilience also now. But I think there is also that aspect that the MD, CEO, they are busy in many other activities. But if you take them through a 10 minutes simulation of what would happen, then, you know, you would see their faces changing. And then that, you know, that realization comes that, you know, it's like an insurance. It's not that you will get something out of it like that digitization which would happen, but it is more in terms of the investment which is needed today. Because again, as I say, it is a question of when it will happen. It's not a question of if you will be spared.
True.
So I think that's where that continuum journey you have to push through different ways. This is just one example of doing it. But it's not easy.
You want to contribute something, Jacxine?
I just wanted to add, I mean, this is like asking, what's the return of investment because you jog in the morning, you eat healthy. You didn't die? That's a good return on investment, I think. So in some way, now you have to quantify it. But at the same time, like we look at a health condition and we say, and I think Nitin will add to the health condition more. But the thing is that if you exercised, you ate healthy, and then you still died, was the investment wrong? No. So I think it's fair to say that while we are on this journey as CISOs to justify a return on investment, as CISOs we also have to be a little pragmatic as to the fact that not everything can have a quantifiable return of investment. Not to say that you shouldn't attempt it with the board. I agree with Ajay. I mean, you have to show them what if scenario. I mean, for this, I always recommend a cyber war game or something to see how prepared you are. Take them through the motions to see what something like that is. But again, caution. Just because you invested and there is a return of investment that you have documented, you can still get hacked. And that does not mean that your investments have been wasted. Because it could have been possible that you got hacked today. You could have been hacked 6 months earlier if you didn't have those controls. So it's always a subjective answer. Passing to Nitin.
Yeah, some points have already been covered. See, coming from the healthcare industry, for me, this was a bit easier because in healthcare, the primary thing is insurance. So when I go to my management of CFOs, I ask them, why do you have insurance? You have insurance if something goes wrong. The same way, the analogy is, if I put all these firewalls or all the layer 7 security and everything, this insurance against the ransomware attacks or any kind of malware or spurious activity happening on my network. So this is the way I can convince them. And in fact, they got convinced. The first thing talk is, do you have insurance? Sir, if you have insurance, then let's have this also, because this is also insurance for us, for a business, for a brand name, for the continuity of the business. This is very important.
Yeah. So I'll end the talk with a very interesting incident which will summarize this answer. I have one uncle, and definitely will not name him on this platform. He had his, I think, regular yearly body check. He had almost 14 to 15 checks, and he go to a very good hospital, maybe Manipal for sure. And he had his health check and spent a quite handsome amount on a lot of tests. And the result came negative. And he said, I spent so much and nothing came out of it. So that's another way to look into it. If I'm doing investment, there should be some kind of a disease should come up to justify my investment. Otherwise, that's a wastage of money. But it's not, because at the end you're getting a clarity that whether you're going on the right direction or not, at least, even if it is not 100% correct. So with this side, thanks to all the panelists who are there. I hope you enjoyed our session, guys. We'll be here. I'll be on my booth. If anyone who's interested to converse, after your meal, we'll be more than happy to converse. Thank you so much, guys. And
Great. Thank you so much once again, and I'll request the